Welcome everyone to the Next Normal Commerce webinar. So let me provide a little bit of context, a little stage setting. So this is part of the Business Resilience in All Times webinar series brought to you by Orange Business Services and Orange Silicon Valley. So at Orange Silicon Valley, we've spent some time to research, analyze, and debate what the impact of the pandemic is on our world. And we're bringing to you 12 episodes to offer insights into the next normal. A little bit about our office. So we've been in the Bay Area for 20 years. We have 45 engineers and analysts and 17 areas of focus. Today's topic is the next normal commerce with a focus on retail. So my name is David Martin. I'm here with my good friend, Vincent Diallo, who's the managing partner at Interlace Ventures. Interlace is a seed fund investing in retail tech. And we have Will Barkis, who's a principal at our office, who helped guide us through some Q&A. So the agenda for today, I'm going to spend about 15 minutes talking about the change in consumer habits and behaviors and offer some predictions for the future. Vincent's going to talk about the last mile challenge. And then we'll end up with, Will lead us through some discussion and Q&A. So as we're going along, if you have questions, feel free to enter them into the chat on the right-hand side. You're also welcome to post them anonymously through the questions area. So with that, we'll start with reshaping retail through new consumer habits. So I'm going to start off with talking about the state of US consumers, and then we're going to talk about what the impact of the pandemic has been on in terms of accelerating existing trends. Where do we see a boomerang effect? So where we've seen a shift, but then we're seeing a shift back. And then what are the new behaviors and habits that consumers are adopting? And we'll end off with some predictions. So consumer health. We know that about on average, 1 in 52 US households has been infected by COVID-19. At least in San Francisco, it's been about 15 weeks or more since we started sheltering in place. There are 120 million US households, 2.3 million infections, and 120,000 deaths. So about 1 in 1,000, about 0.1% of households. So personal finance. A large portion of the US do not have significant savings for emergency funds. 39% do not have enough, would have to sell something to cover a $400 expense. We also know that credit cards are very, very popular in the United States, and 50% of US adults have revolving debt on their credit card with an average amount of almost $7,000. Jobs. So in the media, they've often compared what we're going through right now to the Great Depression. The official unemployment rate, which may understate the case, is 13.3%, or 21 million people unemployed. The Great Depression peaked at 25%, so it's not as dire as that. And we know that that unemployment rate impacts different segments of society in different ways, and that men and Caucasians have the lowest rates. So acceleration, what has sped up due to the pandemic? Well, we know e-commerce. So May's numbers for e-commerce were up 77%. Conversely, we see a decrease in brick and mortar spend. And we know that the US economy is made up, a large part of it is consumer spending. And the OECD has forecast that the US economy will shrink by about 7% this year. Grocery. So online grocery shopping was a niche market prior to the pandemic. So in August of 2019, about 13 million customers. So it's still a niche product, but we've seen that grow 5x between August of last year and May of this year. And what's interesting is it's not just sales, but all of the metrics that lead into those sales have increased. Notably, there are 43 million customers in the United States, which is roughly about a third of all households. And so one of the reasons that grocery had been a niche product is that it's very expensive. So we'll talk about that more a little bit later. Bankruptcies, particularly in apparel brands and department stores, were a theme in 2019. And we've seen that continue into 2020 with the pandemic. And we know that there are also other well-known brands that are at high risk due to their loans. Those that were in a little bit better of a financial place are able to optimize by raising debt and closing stores so that they can rethink their retail approach. The retail apocalypse has been something that the media has talked about for the previous 3 or 4 years. Frankly, I think they jumped the gun. And we know that in 2019, 9,300 stores were closed. And this year, Coresight Research is predicting more than 20,000 closures, and more than 50% of them will be at malls. Historically, the US has been extremely overstored compared to other countries. So the 23.5 number is the square feet allocated per capita, so per person in the United States. The next closest number to that is 16.4 from Canada. And if we compare these numbers to France and Germany, the US has roughly 5 times the amount of space in retail per person compared to those countries. So we know the US is overstored, and 30% of mall square feet is department stores. And department stores are in dire straits at the moment. So the boomerang. So where have we seen a shift? And we're starting to see a shift, a little bit of signs of a shift back. Well, the first is with travel, airplane travel. This is from TSA. So US air travel passengers 2020 versus 2019. And the bottom was April 5th at about 5% of traffic. And we're starting to see a return of that number to just over 20% in recent weeks. Cruise lines. So Carnival, their revenues are massively down, so down about $4.1 billion in the same quarter. They've canceled all cruises through the end of September. They're raising bonds, and they're planning to sell 6 of their cruise ships at about $500 million each. So their goal is to make it through 2021 when we can see a vaccine. Lodging, so hotels, 6 in 10 hotel rooms are vacant, and the industry broadly has laid off or furloughed 70% of staff, and we can see that trend mirrored with Hilton and Marriott. Sports and live events. So the NBA has announced the Disney bubble, and so that's going to begin at the end of July with 22 teams in Florida. Players have been given the option to opt out. So we're going to have to see how this goes. We know that COVID-19 cases are surging in Florida, so we'll see what the result is. We've also heard announcements from the MLB. So the new. So what are some new behaviors going into that we've seen because of the pandemic? Well, the first is that everyone's working from home. So we're working, living, cooking, and playing in the same space and in the same bubbles of people. And so for the people that are still employed, so not the 21 million people that are unemployed, the people that are employed are spending money to make that a more comfortable experience. So we've seen games and activities for families soar in terms of their sales. Online video gaming spend is up 52% in May. Cooking supplies and cooking equipment are seeing a large number of sales. And then the outdoor category is predicted to be up 500% in 2020. So video chat is clearly a big trend and a part of many of our lives. And the main case for that is Zoom. So it's a public Zoom. I'm sure you're all familiar and use Zoom perhaps on a daily basis. Interestingly, the stock. So a typical stock has a price to earnings ratio between 20 and 25. And here we see Zoom stock going up, and to the right, with a price-to-earnings ratio of almost 1,400. And so the reason for that is the high engagement. So there are 300 million daily Zoom participants, 100 million from Google, and Cisco talks about 300 million WebEx users. So video chat is notably our lifeline to the outside world. So we're using chat for work, for school, play, social, dinners, game nights, clubs, and a lot more different activities. With all of this video interaction and with all of this time spent in front of the camera, it's easy to forget that there's a certain segment of the population that don't have broadband internet connections. So this is a study, fairly recent study from early 2019, and it shows that 10% of the US population don't have broadband internet connections. So of those 10%, 32%, or roughly 3.2% of the population aren't interested. About 1% of the total population believe they're too old, and almost 2% believe that it's too expensive. So these families and households are increasingly isolated during these times. Dining out, so restaurants. Restaurants historically run on very, very thin margins, so 6.1%, and a lot of that margin comes from both dessert and alcohol sales. This is a survey from the James Beard Foundation. They found that 60% don't have enough capital for 1 month closure, and 75% believe that they couldn't stay in business after 2 months. Predictions. So what can we learn all of this? Well, first of all, restaurants, if they're going to survive, they're going to focus on delivery. They're going to move to lower rent areas where they can rent kitchens, unless there's some kind of intervention or unless the economy quickly comes back. So these entrepreneurs will need to start over post-COVID. Second point here is about sports and live events, music, concerts. So these will return post-COVID, assuming that vaccines are effective against virus mutations. Apparel brands and department stores, so they're going to shrink their retail footprint. And so in an e-commerce world, they have to rethink and really stress personalization and communicate about their socially responsible actions and potentially adopt clothing fit solutions that are sticky, so to encourage consumer loyalty. The next point is that people are spending more time online and they're engaging in social activities, they're playing games, they're spending time outdoors, and these are habits that are going to stick since we're spending so much time indoors. Video chat, so it's proven itself as an effective way to communicate, particularly with telemedicine. So we should expect to see more video chat across more professional services. Notably, Daily Co. was recently funded to the tune of $20 million. Their business model is to essentially enable video chat for any website. The next point is about the digital divide. So this risks putting children and workers behind. So families that want to remain competitive will either need to pay for internet or move out of the broadband internet deserts. So one of the big changes that we're predicting is that brands, department stores will close, and this will fundamentally reshape our shopping districts and our cities. We will see real estate prices come down, and then we'll see an emptying out of the cityscape. So cities will need to be redeveloped, and this is an opportunity both to make it more affordable, but also to build for corporations to be a part of that solution, and to help build spaces that encourage community, encourage us to come together. The last point here is about grocery. So we know that a third of US households are shopping online for their groceries, but it's very expensive. And so the companies and grocers that can digitally transform to adopt these services to make them both more affordable and profitable for their businesses are going to come out ahead post COVID. And so interestingly, this is the topic that my friend Vincent is going to cover in just a second. So the next section is about the last mile challenge. And let me briefly introduce Vincent Diallo, so managing partner at Interlace Ventures. Interlace is a seed fund investing in retail technology. They've invested in notable companies such as Beta, AlgoPix, and Cargo. And with that, I'll let Vincent take it away.
Thank you very much, David. Very insightful indeed. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to share my point of view with all of you about the last mile challenge for grocery e-commerce. We're going to disclose a couple of innovations from a plain view perspective. But before that, allow me to talk a little bit about Interlace. So again, my name is Vincent Diallo. I'm based in San Francisco, and I'm one of the managing partner of Interlace Ventures, actually two of us. As David mentioned, we invest in early stage in the future of commerce to enable better consumption. For us, it's three kinds of categories of investment. So we invest in new model of distribution and new experiences, B2B tech solutions to power new commerce, and also D2C brands, but those that are leveraging technology to modify the way we shop for a category. We've done 17 investments in 5 years. We already had 3 exits. And with this new fund, we've done 6 investments, including Beta, AlgoPix, and Single-Eye. But let's come back to our topic of the day by stating the problem. So as David mentioned, grocery e-commerce is a 5x growth between August 2019 and May 2020. So it's plus 400%. So it's pretty great news for all the advocates of grocery e-commerce. It's of course an unexpected acceleration. Some talked about we jumped 5 years in a few weeks. There's a little hiccup on this growth, especially as far as delivery is concerned. And this is what I'm going to focus on. So 2 figures. The average cost per parcel of last mile is about $8, and 72% of it is labor cost. And on the other hand, a traditional retailer disclose a 2% net profit on the grocery category. So it's either the client will pay the extra service, which make the value proposal, of course, much less attractive versus, for example, an Amazon proposal, and probably inaccessible for most of the household, or the retailer will partially or fully cover the cost to the point that it make it unprofitable for most of the transaction. So we have one question then. How can technology reconcile convenience and price and make grocery delivery accessible to all? We could talk, of course, about other points of cost saving, and especially curbside pickup solutions, in-store fulfillment, micro-fulfillment efforts. But really today, we want to focus on last mile cost efficiency. So we will look at the vision, let's say the end game ambition in 5 to 10 years time. And in the second time, we'll have a look at more practical solutions that are applicable right now and that may grow in the next normal. But first of all, let's keep in mind that it used to work. It started at the end of the 18th century until the mid-60s. Yes, there was daily delivery of milk across the country. Of course, it was powered by the absence of refrigeration, and also it was really relying on high-density housing. It disappeared with the advent of supermarkets, and that was the one-stop shop effect. So long-term ambitions. Nothing new. I think we all know the end game. We heard about this for years now. the autonomous vehicle that will probably make the last mile almost free. We just took 3 examples here among the dozens of companies that are working on the topic. The first one on the left is Neuro. It's probably one of the most funded one. It's backed by SoftBank. They raised about $1 billion. Of course, I had to mention UDELF, which is a French initiative. And I also wanted to highlight a little memory of CES 2018, the Toyota e-Palette. So most experts agree that that will come live in 5 to 10 years, even though there are already some pilots. We could also mention the recent acquisition of Zoox by Amazon. But maybe an hybrid solution can be found with teleoperation. I want to disclose 2 examples here. And let's notice that it's actually very likely that the autonomous vehicle will also leverage teleoperation for edge cases. So the first example we have on the left is Robomart. This one is fully teleoperated. Quite interesting attempt because the whole idea behind was to enable consumers to directly select the fruit and veggies the way they like it to be ripe. And it's actually one of the key element of disappointment in the grocery delivery experience. I mean, we don't have the avocado or the banana the way we like it, and we can be really disappointed sometimes by fresh product deliveries. So Robomart enable the consumer to choose exactly what they like. One of the issues here is that in order to be accepted on the road, it has to remain low speed, and potentially it can create congestion. The second example is Tortoise. Let's play maybe a little video, but watch out, the volume is a little bit high. I invite you to reduce the volume. Kathy, can we play the video of Tortoise? So it's gonna last for 30 seconds. Not sure you can hear me. So some options on the platform. I'm gonna wait for it to go through. So we have people using e-scooter, traditional way. And here we go. So that's about it. You have it, you understand. Toto is actually proposing to teleoperate e-scooter directly from Mexico. And believe it or not, it's actually live. The video we saw has been shot in Peachtree in Georgia. And why I'm mentioning it here is because they plan to use exactly the same technology to power grocery delivery. Honestly, I'm not really sure what to think about it. Actually passed on this investment, but it was a long reflection on our end. What we noticed is that some of the players are betting on teleoperation, and I'm talking about those lightweight bots that are autonomous, but also will leverage teleoperation for edge cases. So we disclosed 2 cases here, again, among probably dozens of companies working on that. So the first one on the left is Starship Technology, and the second one is KiwiBots. With COVID, COVID brought actually additional attention to this solution. We heard about several pilots and even live delivery on some university campus. The little issue we have with those one, at least my opinion on this, is that they are quite expensive devices. The one we disclose here are probably a few $1,000s each. I saw another one that was $15,000. The thing is, they're quite expensive and they're still vulnerable. And we all have in mind the graveyard of e-scooter. And if you browse on the internet, you will find some interesting videos around those bots. So let's close this futuristic view, visions on probably another pretty strong ambition, and that echoes the movie Ready Player One, where we saw pizza delivery by drone. Just wanted to disclose again 2 examples here among several companies. The first one being Prime Air, the second one being Matternet. Let's be clear. One of the issue on a drone and drone delivery is the noise pollution, but it seems like the latest versions are solving this issue. But today, what we see is that they are mainly used for emergency deliveries, and it's probably related to a cost issue. Here again, we saw some pilots ongoing. Matternet is partnering with UPS, and they have some live program already ongoing. Key question for us today is what can be used and what can be directly implemented, let's say, in a post-COVID era, which starts, I'm not saying post-COVID era starts now, but we're already in the next normal. So I could not mention this attempt of saving costs powered by Amazon. So you also, the prime truck in the streets, I mean, for all of you living in the US, I mean, at some point in the shelter, we had the impression that we were the only cars in the street. Next year, we will have the prime truck being replaced by this new prime truck, which is fully electrical and powered by Rivian. It doesn't solve the key issue of the last mile cost, because 72% of the costs remain labor cost. So it's a partial solution to our original question. So let me highlight a second and a third solution. They basically, those 2 ones, applying the concept of carpool to the shopping cart. The first one on the left is a program that Walmart launched in 2018, proposing to their employees to deliver Walmart consumer when employees are on their way back home. So it's extra money for the employee, it's cheap delivery for the shopper. I mean, everybody is satisfied. We don't really know about the success of the program, but it's quite appealing to my mind. A very smart move from Walmart. And Walmart went even further. They announced this partnership last month. So the partnership with Nextdoor being this neighborhood social network. And it's kind of a, well, we can summarize this experience by, hey guys, I'm going to Walmart. Anybody needs something within the neighborhood. So I'm personally a big fan of this idea of creating a local social connection in time of disconnection. Without saying, it seems 100 times more personal than I would say an Instacart solution. One can even expect to get a better understanding of their own preference through repetition, and finally, maybe get exactly the product the way they like it. Again, the banana and the avocado, probably. But what more important is that it creates this social connection. So maybe it will give some fame to the shared economy and make social media actually social. I've been looking in this space for a while. I would have loved to invest in it, but Nextdoor was too big of a threat, and obviously for a good reason. Instead, and I will finish by this example, I decided to invest in my latest favorite. It's called Cargo AI. What Cargo is planning to do is to deliver anything you buy offline or online in your car trunk. So you're going to say, yeah, it's the same as Amazon Key. They're already doing that. But Amazon Key only deliver in connected cars, which is a very limited portion of the car park. For cargo, they can do it in any kind of car, which is not really the very core technology, where, because it's somehow commoditized. It's hard to do it well, but it's somehow commoditized. Where they have a real breakthrough is more the predictive platform that will enable to optimize the routing and the timing in a way that they plan to reduce the last mile cost by 2/3. And how they do that, they plan to leverage density. So exactly as the milk delivery man, they plan to deliver 5 cars at each stop instead of delivering 1 home. So it's very appealing. It can be live no later than at year end. And on top of it, they also power returns, knowing that returns generally you have to pack, label, and drop at maybe the UPS or USPS counter, where here you would just have to drop the product in your trunk and somebody will come to pick it up. So again, it should be live next year. So that's all I have for you today. Of course, I'm happy to discuss with any one of you about what we're doing at Interless and what we're looking at. If any of you is interested in a pilot with cargo, of course, do not hesitate to get in touch with me. And I'm also very happy to invite you to another webinar about post-COVID commerce, which is more about stores. It's moderated by my partner, and it takes place tomorrow, actually, at 11 a.m. Pacific time, with the CEO of Beta and the group CDO of Unibuy. And that's about it for me.
Great. Thank you so much for your insights, Vincent. Really appreciate it. I'm going to hand this over to Will, and he's going to lead us through some Q&A. Will? Okay, so I think one of the questions that we've seen in the chat, Vincent, so I'll sort of jump in here. One of the questions we've seen in the chat is, given the social distancing paranoia, is the sharing economy going to survive?
I don't know. Obviously, there are some ways to make it, I don't know, contactless and safe. It's hard to say. I mean, it's really hard to say. I have no much vision on that. What is sure is that as far as grocery delivery is concerned, there's definitely a way to do it contactless. I mean, shared economy is also based on digital interaction. Doesn't mean that there must be a physical interaction. So to my mind, of course, it's a model that's going to thrive. It's going to be adjusted and taking into account the necessary, I would say, social distancing and sanitary measures that need to be implemented here.
Great. So, wearing your investor hat, what are the ways that the pandemic is changing the way you are thinking about which companies or verticals to invest in?
Well, for us, it's not such a big change. It's just an acceleration. I mean, we've been investing on those trend lines for a while. We somehow, with the pandemic, we have to revise our timing assumption. And of course, we have to consider the impact of recession. So not such a big change. Acceleration again. Now I'm interested in areas today that are more or less impacted by the situation. I can give you a few. As you notice, I'm quite interested in last mile. I believe that there are still some innovation to be found and to be funded and can be successful. I'm also interested in solution to recreate impulse purchase. So how do you create impulse purchase when impulse is more social and when you're outside, and so I believe there's some initiative to recreate impulse purchase digitally. I look also a lot at conscious shopping. I think you touched a little bit about that in your presentation, David. But there's a shift in the mindset of the consumers. More sustainable shopping, of course, and here also there's a question of accessibility. I look also at solution to make operation, let's say, workable in the context of social distancing. I look at multi-layer marketing, loyalty, because that's been an issue also during the brand loyalty during COVID. Of course, I'm super interested in 5G cross-commerce. Another thing I'm looking at these days is B2B marketplaces in general, but B2B marketplaces, especially with the end of trade show. And with the recession, of course, I'm interested also a solution of financing, POS financing, mainly.
Will, you want to?
Hi there. Yeah, despite our best efforts, we need some 5G up in here. Sorry. Yeah, thanks for the great presentation, Vincent and David. That was amazing. So next question, just to jump right in. Do you think, or what are some of the old retail stores doing to keep up with changing times? And I guess the question is it doesn't seem like having e-commerce capabilities is enough.
Right. So I'll jump in first. So I think that, so retailers are fundamentally, if they can, they're shifting to click and collect. So click and collect is a big part of their business today, and I know that many, or at least several retailers are taking their stores and turning them into distribution centers. So they're shipping more product to the stores and allowing people to come, for instance, and pick up bikes at stores that are already made. Historically. So there was a study during the Great Recession, 2008, 2010. There's a study by HBR that looked at previous recessions and looked at they looked at all publicly listed companies across all the previous recessions. And what they found was that the companies that thrived coming out of the recession had a couple different characteristics. So about, I believe, 9% of those companies thrived, actually came out with higher profit margins. And the way they did that was the three main characteristics were, one, that they didn't just cut their operations, but they rethought how they were approaching their business. So they reinvented their operations. The second was that they invested in R&D, in new products and services during this time in a very strategic way. And then the third was that they didn't necessarily do a lot of layoffs. So they tried to keep as much of the talent pool as possible to keep morale high during that. To answer your question, what are they doing? Well, they need to reinvent themselves and to potentially have additional business lines, additional ways to interact with customers and to apply the strategies that HBR study highlights.
Vince, you want to jump in at all, or?
Well, no, I'm gonna stay on.
So actually, I do have a question for you that I think transitions well, which is that you have mentioned advising companies to stay as customer focused as possible, and is that the secret to a successful digital transformation, in your opinion?
Well, yes. Well, I would say that's exactly the principle of new commerce, and at Untitled, that's exactly what we've been trying to invest in when we're talking about B2B tech solutions for traditional or existing players, and to adapt to new commerce. So I think Jack Ma, I'm not sure, coined this term of newcomers, and he was mentioning that it's evolving from a B2C perspective to a C2B perspective. So consumer to business is really this vision of putting the consumer at the center of the whole organization, and considering that the consumer is the channel. So at the end of the day, the Holy Grail is really highly personalized. The Holy Grail is being able to deliver the right product at the right time, right place, the right price, of course, and even maybe before the consumer knows that he wants it. So there is no doubt that that's the secret of successful digital transformation. It goes with this notion of collecting as many data to better understand your consumer, as many data as possible. So for me, it's definitely yes, point on. That's really the secret of successful digital transformation, no question.
So another follow-up on that actually came in and says, you know, I appreciate your consideration about last mile being accessible to all, and it seems like COVID is splitting the world into the haves and the have-nots. Do you have any thoughts on how we can make these new technologies more inclusive?
Well, I would just rebound on the first. I mean, one of the points that David make on the accessibility to the internet, because I think it starts here. I don't know how this can evolve, but obviously that's probably one of the first steps. Make broadband available for all. Maybe 5G will make 4G more accessible. I have no idea, but the thing is that's probably the first point. Then the other thoughts is, as I said, try to work on solution that can really impact all consumers and not only focus on the 1%, which is, to my mind, what we've been observing in the grocery space for a while. Most of the people cannot benefit from it. So yeah, think about inclusion, and I do think VC have a role to play here. Inclusion, and accessibility, and I do think VC has a role to play here. And this is something we look at. For example, at this moment, I'm really reviewing a case that is intending to make good consumption accessible to all. And it's not only from a price point perspective; it's also considering the let's say the duration of use of the product, and also powering regenerative services. So it's very, very interesting. If you combine it with financing, that you can make actually good consumption that is not deterrent to environment consideration, accessible to all. So that's part of our mission at Interless, at least, and that's why we're talking about better consumption. More is definitely not a solution that will be. I mean, more is not the direction that will be workable in the near future or in the future, I would say. So that's why we try to focus on better consumption, and that includes accessibility.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One more broad question came in. Do you see any large-scale behavior change that COVID has brought that surprised you?
Not surprising for me, because I think they're all logical. Some I did not expect, of course, but when you look into the explanation, it's very logical. I think, well, I'm going to say from my own experience, but what was really interesting is to see this this trend to inwardness, because we all have experienced the shelter in our own way. I mean, from somebody who's living alone at home or somebody who's living in a family, when this is totally different if you're sharing your apartment or if you're alone. I mean, all the experience have been quite singular and specific, and I think we had much less stimulation, and so there was this tendency to turn into our inner self, and at the same time, this interconnection between this interior and the rest of the population. I mean, this exterior. So that was quite interesting. I would say, point of connection between inwardness and outwardness. So that's something I did not expect, and I think that's also one of the engine of conscious shopping. So not surprising, but maybe unexpected. Of course, well explained, and promising.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think we're gonna end the questions there, but thank you very much for those thoughts.
Great. So thanks, Vincent, and thanks, Will. So a quick summary of what we've heard today. So fundamentally, there'll be 3 points. Post-COVID, we're going to see a lot of closings of stores, so restaurants, apparel stores, department stores, and so this is going to be an opportunity for businesses to be part of the solution, to reshape this physical space so that we can bring people together. And this is also an opportunity for corporations to bring their brands closer to the consumers, to the population. The second point is about habits that stick, which is partially about what Vincent was just talking about. So we've seen outdoor activities, cooking, gaming, video, all as new habits that are mass market that a lot of people are adopting. And I think what we're going to see is more adoption of video chat, and this is a way for with large companies to digitally transform and to engage with their customers on a much deeper, more human level. Thirdly, delivery. So Vincent talked about the last mile opportunities, and he stressed 2 of them. So one is trunk delivery, both for delivering packages in the back of people's cars, but also for returns. He also talked about local social opportunities and stressed the partnership between Walmart and Nextdoor. And so I just want to end by talking about X-Force. So this is Orange Silicon Valley's corporate co-innovation program. If you're interested in the trends of Silicon Valley, or you're interested in partnering or investing in startups, we'd really like you to be a part of the program. Please feel free to reach out either to myself, so david1.martin@orange.com, or Ellen Crown at ellen.crown@orange.com. And with that, thank you very much for your time today. We look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Thank you.